How to stack the deck in your favor for funding. Hello, everyone. My name is Tessa. Welcome to the Futurist Mindset Show. I'm going to introduce your host, Reagan Rodriguez. Reagan is a futurist who teaches stratosphere wealthy legacy families how to become impact investors. Hi, Reagan.
Hello, Tessa. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing wonderful, and I'm just excited. We covered so much information in our last show. We talked about the 12 steps to raise funds, and we covered the
Went
three,
over three. Yeah.
the first three, right? So because there's a lot of steps. So we talked about building that level of certainty and belief. That was step one. Step two for physical expression. And then
Yeah.
step three for external focus. Now we get to hear some more of the steps today.
Yeah, we sure do. So I'll go ahead and kind of get started here.
Perfect.
I know that step 4, outcome, purpose, action. This is actually one of my favorite ones, Tessa. I want to kind of tie this all together. Before I can speak to an investor, I have to, just like the story I shared about equestrian, how they close their eyes and picture their routine, before they get on a horse, before they get on, they're going to visualize it. Gymnasts do that as well. They visualize their routine. So what I want you to do is to visualize in your mind to know what your outcome is and then visualize it. So know the purpose of why you're here, why you're in that meeting, and then why you're then going to take that action. Outcome, purpose, and then action. A good visual to remember is how the Greeks say "opa," which, by the way, it means flaming cheese. They light the cheese on fire in front of you at your table, and then they say "opa" if you've ever been to a Greek restaurant.
Haven't
So
seen that.
in order to wrap up these steps, yeah. Do you see how it solidifies the belief, the physical expression, step 2, and then the external focus, step 3, and it then solidifies the outcome. So I even write out my outcome in my Outlook calendar or in my little notebook that I have. And I, keep this with me. What is the outcome of this presentation? How do you want people leaving the room? How do you want, and then why are you here? Why? What is the purpose of the outcome? And then, boom, now you act. Now you're ready. I've seen the end. I know why. So my imagination is engaged through outcome, through purpose, and now I need to actually do what I'm supposed to do, and then I take action. Outcome, focused, purpose-driven, and action-oriented. I want to go for it. I want to get up. I want my nervous system driving me towards that outcome. I really worked on there from the belief about my investors, my physical expression. I'm using my energy now in a proper way. I've got this external focus. I've asked myself some compelling questions, get myself focused on the investor or who I'm speaking to. If you're wanting to create a fund for yourself, let's assume you have a construction project, then this is going to be that first step in intercommunication. When you're speaking to a potential investor, you want to go from interpersonal, which is belief, physical expression, external focus, outcome, purpose, and action. And now I'm entering into interpersonal, which is rapport. I want you to think about at the core of rapport is trust and respect. Step 5, okay? I want them to like me. I want them to trust me. And I want them to respect me. And in order to get that, I have to give it. So intentionally, like the people that you're doing business with. like the people that are in the audience. If you're presenting to, let's say, angel investors or venture capitalists, like them. The deck of cards is now going to be in your favor because you have confidence working for you. Since you did step 1, belief, you've done step 3, external focus. Now go out and elevate them through liking them, genuinely liking them, and then trust that they're going to respond to what you're saying. Trust that this is going to be a great meeting. If I invited you into my office, then I've surrendered that time with you. Trust that that potential investor that you're meeting with is going to respond positively and will then kind of move forward with what an investment into your project. For what? For their long-term future. Respect the investor, respect yourself, and how you communicate by framing things appropriately, by making sure that is your intention when you're going out. Somebody asked me the other day, how would it manifest itself? In other words, that you didn't trust or respect your investor or whoever it is that you are speaking to. And very simply, in your physiology, your eye contact. How uncomfortable are you with some of the things that you're actually saying to them? I want you to think about that for a minute. Have you ever seen that person that has tried to sell you in an uncomfortable way? I mean, you're not going to influence anybody that way. Remember, if that person gave you the meeting, just like if Tessa gives that meeting in the Zoom room, then don't expect them to not like what you're offering. And also, don't ever be in this waiting from a neutral perspective to see whether or not you did a good job. That is not how you build rapport. Your time and my time is the most precious resource. I have trust that I get what you're saying, trust that I'm going to understand it and invest with you, and I'm going to do business with you. Step 6 of 12 is interpersonal communication. You want to control focus through asking relevant questions. Listen to their outcomes. Questions not only control focus, but questions is going to control what your attitude. You don't want to ask, what happened with the last 3 situations I did? And I've seen people do it that way. They somehow think that they're being authentic or vulnerable by asking questions that, no. The investor wants an outcome. Let your questions lead the way. And remember this, you are interrupting their day. And if you talk to a guy like me, hey, I might daydream. So how would you keep me involved in that conversation? How are you going to keep me involved so that my mind doesn't wander? Ask me a question. Okay. Step 7, have the courage to challenge people to grow and change, whether it's with investors or whoever it is that your audience is that you are speaking to. People want to be challenged. We love reality TV shows and sports, and we like anything where there's a challenge. And I know in my life, I'm waiting for someone to challenge me appropriately. What do I mean by that? You do that well, Tessa. Challenge me towards greatness, not a threat. Instead, challenge me to step up my game. Challenge me to maybe do things differently and just do it appropriately. If let's assume you're starting a new fund and I'm training that person, I will give examples of what that next step is going to be. I remember once somebody said to me, Reagan, can you give me the macro view? So if you're listening to this and you still think that medium-term note or a private placement platform or that standby letter of credit or bank guarantee, or here's the latest scheme, those small cap programs. Look, guys, listen, if it's been years and you haven't been fully funded with that speculative project of yours, then you're going to have to do things differently. And by the way, I get it. I really do. I don't like change. I can be stubborn. I tend to be such a creature of habit. However, what I do, if you're working with me with setting up your fund, or whether you're working with somebody else in my organization, we're going to support you. But we're not only going to support you, we're also going to push you to make changes. I know that if you are already successful, like a lot of the people I work with, it's easy to kind of rest on that success and not anticipate or look out into the future. If you are watching this and you want to start a fund for your humanitarian project or initiative, then I'm going to ask you to think about what are 3 things that you can do right now to proactively raise the capital that you need for your fund in an appropriate way towards the vision that you've created. Make sure that people want to be challenged. If you have the courage to do it, then people will love you for it. We want our patterns interrupted. If you hire me to help you, I am going to challenge you in an appropriate way, and you will love me for it. Let me also add my 2 cents about, as I mentioned it before, about medium-term notes and bank guarantees and the ability of being in control versus waiting or being dependent on somebody else. I realize that not all of you are dealing with medium-term note payouts, or maybe you may not be dependent on that bullet program. But look, guys, I didn't mean to roll my eyes. And I'm also not saying that it's not going to happen for you. What I am saying is that I'd like you to have a little bit more control over your fund for when you get funded. Number 8, let me move on. I've kind of gone off. You're going to have to engage on imagination. You need to remember that when you are communicating to people, they're in one of 3 categories in their mind at a given time. I know myself, I'm either in memory or I'm thinking about something that happened yesterday, or you said something, and then I think of the past, or I'm in imagination and I'm thinking about the future, and maybe I'm not paying attention to what you're saying. You can kind of see people when they doze off or their mind is elsewhere. When you meet with that investor, you want to be focused on them, what they are saying, and how it impacts you and your fund. People are either in memory, in imagination, or in focus. If I want them in focus, I have to engage imagination. The most powerful way of engaging imagination is through stories. So if you notice, I go over the principles and you get more focused on listening to the principle in my story. Stories count. Stories matter. Examples matter. Always have 3 or 4 stories throughout your presentation that you can pull out at any time whenever you see that people are losing focus or energy in the room or in that Zoom meeting. People think that they will impress people with the numbers. I've noticed that, and people do not care about the numbers as much as you actually think that they do. You see, we have these cells in our brain. They're called mirror neurons, and they are triggered when we hear a good story because we literally picture ourselves in the shoes of that story. It's kind of like a movie in our mind, and it triggers empathy. And triggering empathy is what then triggers generosity. There's the story of self, story of us, and then there's the story of now. So if I was raising funds for, let's say, a wind farm or let's assume it was a 300 million waste to energy project, I'm going to ask that potential investor, tell me why you care about alternative energy. Tell me about you and your skin in the game within this project. Tell me why you care about this. And then I'm going to give them a sense of urgency of why it's important and why we need to break ground on this project now. And be sure to approach that investor in the same way you would a relationship. You wouldn't bring charts or a pitch deck on a date. You see, we are so quick to ask for the sale and target somebody. And it's what I call it, hit it and quit it fundraising. And that's not what I'm about. I want to build a long-term relationship with my investor. Look at it as dating your investor. You are engaging with them. On the first date, if they like what you're saying, then they'll take you out on the second date. And over the course of that, we start finding out, do we view the world the same way? Do we have a global mindset? And then you solicit. And then after you solicit, you then continue to nurture that relationship. I think that most fund managers, and that also goes for executive directors of ministries or nonprofits, oh my goodness, they are absolutely awful at donor retention. They think that the gift is the end, and it's not. It's just the beginning of that relationship. Once you got married, you don't just take your spouse out once a year. You have to invest in that relationship, right? And the most you invest in that relationship, then the more that you will see that growth. That's how you get return investments. That's how you get large investments or even gifts, as in grants with sovereign funds. People have to get to know you and what you're about. Are you able to achieve the objectives you told me that your fund or organization would achieve? And if you can do that, then you're going to form this beautiful friendship over time that will lead to the transformation of large gifts into your fund. Before I go into number 9, let me go over this. Just kind of went into my mind just now. I told you my mind tends to wander sometimes. Number 1, the founder story. Number 2, the business story. And then number 3, that customer story. The founder story is really what got you interested in the line of work that you're in. The business story is how your business got started and the big problem that it solves. And then the customer story is going to be that transformation that's going to take place in someone after they've worked with you. And that's the point of why we're doing this, right? Of these shows. It's almost like a home and a community for brokers raising capital and people that are in project funding. I wanted to be able to give them the significance that they deserve. I wanted to be able to show them that they are the heartbeat of the project by helping them raise the funds that are needed. Sometimes we're not treated that way. So I always look at myself as a person that gets to raise funds. I've met people that they say, we have to raise 2 million first to then get it shovel ready. Or I spoke with someone earlier today, Tessa, and he had mentioned to me that he was going to get this big loan from a bank, but he's got to raise the funds for this down payment. Before he could finish, I told him what I'm going to say to all of you. It's not, I have to raise funds. You get to. You get the opportunity to meet new people that you are going to collaborate on lucrative projects with. Remember this. If you want to do something really big and you want to raise 100 million or above that, then you are going to have to sell your dream on yourself, your customers, and a vision that we can accomplish. All right, let's move on. Speaking of attitudes, maybe about 2-3 months ago, I got a call from a friend of a friend that works in donor relations. He works in nonprofit, and he wanted some advice. And he had called me and he had said that what is the most challenging thing for him, and he really used this word. He says, I have to raise funds. And I did interrupt him. And I said, you have to, or you get to. This is what I mean by challenging people in an appropriate way. And they're going to appreciate you for it. I asked him to think of the last benefactor that he contacted that did make a donation. And then immediately he begins to tell me what great friends they've become and how he and his wife even vacation with this couple together and how close they are now. And so I told him, then think about that. You took the initiative and contacted this person. And as a result, look what's now taken place. So if I was you, I'd think about that too. Think about how there are people out there that want to hear from you. Remember, you don't have to. And instead, you get the opportunity to meet wonderful people that are givers in life. And it is refreshing to be around a giver versus a miserable miser that just wants to take. I want you to think about that if you're watching this. Do you want to be around a miser? That's where that word comes from. The root word of miserable, miser, or do you want to be a genius, which is a generous person? I actually don't know if the root word of genius comes from generosity, but miser does come from miserable. So that's it. I think I've shared enough. We'll get into 9, 10, 11, and 12 next time.
All right. Well, that's excellent. And we are here on Fridays at noon Eastern time. So definitely hit the bell so you get notifications and you can catch step 9, 10, 11, and 12. But I think you covered so much great information. And if you have to, we'll link all of the shows together for this series so you can go back and forward.